using relationships as best as you possibly can. So, you know somebody that I know, or your coach knows me personally and actually would vouch for you. I don't think there's a problem with a coach reaching out on that behalf, but just trying to get the ball rolling, because obviously you just want to get eyes on you initially. I always say to kids is when you're at an event, it can't be, well, I had a bad game. We're all going to have bad games, but you only get that coach there for a short period of time. So you need to make sure that you're on, you know what I mean, in terms of your mentality and the way you play, because if you're at a field of 20 fields, right, and there's 6 different time slots and maximum we can have is 4 people out there watching, you don't get a lot of multiple opportunities. So if you do have that relationship with somebody via email, like I always say, hey, if it, someone I played in college with, or someone I coached with, or, recruited, a player years ago from, where they have credibility with the program, I think that's always helpful. Not just a normal email, which is great, right? And we try to look through everything because we don't want to miss people either. But just trying to make a connection, I think, is always helpful.
Yeah. So how do I go about making that process? Let's say I'm playing for a club, just talking to the coaches at my club, and then kind of trying to figure out, who can help me get eyeballs on myself the best that I can.
Yeah, I think hopefully the club coach, it starts with your club coach and saying, hey, we're going to this event. And then you look in and saying, like, who's going to be at this event, right? We all have to register for the events that we're at. And then taking a deep dive in and saying, hey, I want this school, or I have an interest in this school. But I always encourage kids and parents, because they always help a little bit in this process, is know a little bit about the school prior to emailing and saying, like, I know that I can fit in well with you, or I'm looking for a big competitive school, but then you're emailing Wake Forest, right? So, like, spelling things correctly. There's a little work that goes in than just sending a generic email, in my opinion, out. And I hope the club coaches can help, at least facilitate that and, educate the kids. Or, hey, I'm looking at Wake Forest, Notre Dame, and, so-and-so. And then the coach will be like, well, I don't know if that's the school that you should be looking at. Like, just having some honest and transparent conversations, but then doing your research, right? And saying, like, big school, small school, location, know the conference, and then maybe watch them play and do a little bit of background. I mean, there's no excuse now to say you can't watch college soccer, because most every game is streamed. You can even go back on right now and watch our ESPN Plus games and see positionally how we play versus the way you play, how our team plays versus the way your club team plays, and starting to find that right spot. I don't think enough of us do enough research. I went through it with my daughter. She's a volleyball player, like the research of how many outside hitters they have versus, like, based off the graduation year. There's a little bit more research, and I think work you could do in the front prior to just sending out random emails.
Yeah, I mean, given all of the options that we have in the college recruiting process, how should players be organizing that information, and how many schools should they be choosing up front so that they can make it a little bit more manageable for themselves?
Well, I think, obviously with so many changes in college soccer now, I think education is important, right? I think you have to look at roster sizes of schools, with Division I, with the guys that opt into the settlement case or the house case, you're looking at a maximum roster of 28. So I do think diversifying who you email, I think, is incredibly important. Is okay, I got some Division I schools, I got some Division II schools, and I have some Division III schools. And understanding, as I tell people, like, if you are a passionate soccer player, right, there's a place for you to play college soccer. It may just not be that initial place that you thought of when you sat down to do your college search, and I think I'm a prime example of that, right? I was very fortunate to land where I did land, but when I first started writing letters, it was to the top 25 schools in the country. Was I a top 25 athlete? In my mind and in my house, I probably was to my parents. But in the end, I lived in a little bit of a bubble, and I needed to continue to work and research, what was the best fit for me. And I wouldn't be sitting on this podcast with you right now if I didn't make the decision that I made, but, like, my ego could have said, well, I want to go to a lower level Division I and maybe not play. right? Or I can go to the best fit for me competitively, academically, financially, location wise, where I can reach my goals and ambitions during school and after. So I do think diversifying that list is important.
Definitely. And when we talk about high level players, I think players really underestimate what it means to play at the highest level. So can you just tell us how competitive it is at a school like Wake Forest and in the conference that you guys are in?
Yeah, we will you just got me because we just got out of a session where I thought the intensity was good, and then we went into the weight room and the intensity was good, but some of the details were off. And when you're playing at this level, you always have to be on. And I think you get high level players that, let's be fair, I've been fortunate to coach some good players. I'm fortunate to have talented players in my locker room currently, but they come from places where they were some of the best players. That's not, you know what I mean? I don't think that would be argued by anybody. But sometimes we miss the ownership and the accountability and the attention to detail. And a lot of players say they want to play, but they want days off mentally, or you're telling them and you're giving them information, but they're not applying it. That becomes frustrating, right? And then being held accountable is difficult for them. So it is difficult when you're at a high academic institution where guys don't realize the workload that they have to put in academically. And then, for instance, right now we're in a spring season and everybody's like, oh, the spring, that's my downtime. We're busier in the spring because that's our physical, mental, and technical development phase, where we demand more out of them in the spring than we probably do in the fall. We're still managing loads, but it's hard, it's intense. We're challenging them, trying to develop them and get them better. So their bodies break down a little bit. There's no excuses. And then, like I say, it's like everybody gives us their best. So we're not allowed to be off. And the differences are so small. You make a mistake, you lose a game, right, at this level. And maybe where they came from, you make a mistake, you get away with it, or the kid wasn't good enough and he puts it over the bar. Here, the ball's in the back of the net, and you're going to have the ball for 80% possession, but you still lost 1-0. And we can't be there, well, they're not that good. No, they were good enough to beat you. And that's the same thing in the classroom. You're competing against some of the best students in America, right? In the conference, you're competing against the best teams in America. So the attention to detail, the consistency, the mental preparation or the mental engagement it's a constant thing. Like, do we enjoy it? Absolutely. Do we have some fun? Absolutely. Do they get a little bit of downtime? Sometimes, but it's an all year. It is a job. But most of the guys here, they don't look at it as jobs. They look at it as future careers. So you have to invest if you want to have a career in the game of football. Our guys come in to summer school. They're all in session one summer school. So they're grinding, they're playing, they're lifting, they're running. That's where our team is formed. And then we have the season. Then they go home for a month for winter break. And they'll do some lifting and running during that. Spring, we're going from the first week of January until the first week of May, right? And like we're training. And then as soon as they leave, we're getting into MLS clubs, USL2, USL2 for the summer, and they're back in summer school. So it's like, it is all the time. The one I will say, one of my do nots is, in the recruiting process is, sorry, coach, I didn't get back to you because I was really busy this week. We had a game on the weekend. I'm like, you have no idea what busy is yet, young man, right? So, or the parent emails and said, hey, I'm emailing for Johnny because he's had a really busy week. Wow, right? Like, that's nothing. That doesn't really serve the college coach and the institution well, when you're thinking someone's busy in high school. So it's just a different world. And it does take an elite mindset, I do think, to grind that out on a consistent basis. It's not easy, and something I don't know. I would be naive to say that maybe I think that I could have done it here, not talent-wise, right? But from a mentality, but I don't think so. I think I demand a lot of our guys. I think the university demands a lot of our guys, but I also think that's why our guys, get better, over their time here. And some of them have been fortunate to reach their goals and ambitions afterwards.
How do you help them manage that time, and what resources do you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, we're a little bit unique, in that regard, but we have Obviously, we have a full-time academic counselor that works with them, and from scheduling, from tutors to study hall, we mandate all of those things. We're pretty, when I talked about details and attention to detail, if a kid is short study hall, they don't play on the weekend or midweek or whatever that next game is, because that's life. You know what I mean? You miss a meeting at work, or you're late to something, like, or I use study hall as the equivalent. Is if you're 5 minutes short in study hall, right, you're probably gonna forget, or you're gonna miss your matchup in the 85th minute on a restart, right? So like life lessons through the game of football. We have a sports performance coach that could be used for life. It can be used for performance based. Obviously, across campus, there's all the help that you need. And then we meet, actually, our players meet with our academic counselor weekly as well. And then every couple of weeks, we sit on those meetings. And then in addition, myself and my staff meet with every player every week. It could be training video, it could be game video, it could be how you doing, review in school, how your grades doing. So that's an important piece to it. And we do a personal development plan before each semester, and we try to touch upon those bullets of what their goals are for the semester. It could be academically, or athletically, and making sure that at least we're hopefully checking off some of those goals as the semester goes on.
Yeah, I mean, the demands of college soccer, we all know about how competitive it is. And I think that players really, in terms of it being competitive compared to comparing yourself to other people. So you mentioned the mental side of the game. How important is it for a player to come in and really understand the demands of the college soccer game on the mental side?
Yeah, I don't think I think we could talk about it, right? And you can preach that coming in, but until you're actually in, right? And it's day to day, and you're not playing right away, or you're playing right away. And how do you maintain that, right? I always say, I think it's harder for someone to come in and play young and then not play than it is someone not playing. But the person that's not playing thinks it's hard, right? So I do think our main goal and objective when the kids are here, especially in summer school, just be a good teammate. I know that sounds like coaching cliche and corny, but at the same time, if you're just worried about supporting the team, right, and understanding the culture, the dynamic, and how things really work, you're putting yourself in the best situation, right, to be successful, not alienating yourself immediately because you're trying to do too much or prove yourself. I always say, like, in summer school and in preseason, you're not earning a starting spot the first week. Understanding, listening, and applying, I think, is important. Not, hey, well, when I was in the academy, don't care, right? You're here now, right? And it's the same thing as if they were professional footballers. Well, the old manager, that's not what the new manager wants to hear, right? Like, so there's adjustments and adaptation that goes there. But from the mental side, is I don't know, you could do a lot of preparation. You could be very mentally strong, but there's going to be adversity. And it really is, how do you respond to adversity? And it doesn't have to be from the mental side. It actually can be just, adversity. It can be getting injured early, right? Or getting banged up, or being sore, or, like making a mistake, or just not gathering something tactically fast enough. How do you rebound? And I think a good culture and good people, right? Like, people can help you, but it starts with that, there's relationships and being a good teammate, because to be a good teammate, it's not just supporting others, it's actually taking in information, right? And not being defensive, and knowing that there's people helping you. You talked about comparing, right? I always say, is you be a good teammate. Don't compare yourself with other players in your position, because I think as soon as you start doing that, you fail. If you use like a goalkeeper battle, and a goalkeeper comes out for a cross, and like, oh, now I have to come out for a cross. The chances are you come out at the right time because you're trying to be a little bit more ambitious, or a forward guy just gets on the turn and smacks one in the top corner. Now you feel you need to do the same. You're forcing the game. You turn it over. Now your team's defending. I just think comparison is hard. As a coach, well, they have this budget, or they can travel this way, or they have this gear, or they make this much money. I think if you start doing that, you're failing, you're letting yourself down, you're letting your team down because you're worried about things that you can't control. So just, I think that's a big piece of, the college experience. Staying on top of things helps your mental preparation, not procrastinating academically, not procrastinating in the way you take care of your body, I think is big. We call it pots and pans, and the guys make fun of me because like if you're just holding out your arms with some pots and pans, right, like it gets fatiguing, just that simple stuff. But if you start adding, right, you're balancing all over the place, and it could be relationships and not handling them appropriately, academics, the way you eat, the way you hydrate, all those things, you need to be on top of if you want to be in a good mental state, to perform at a high level in a very intense season.
Yeah, so getting back to getting eyeballs on yourself in the recruiting process, where are you going to look for players, and where do you normally find the recruits that you guys are bringing in?
Yeah, we the way we recruit and the way obviously it's still word of mouth, right? When coaches call us, right? That certainly does help with people with reliability, or people that we've had players from in the past that understand the level that we're at. I think that's helpful. But we go to most major events. What are major events, right? Like, we will have most of our staff at most of all the MLS Next events. Generation Adidas, we have people, the former, I would say, major events. It's not being disrespectful, but like, where it's changed a little bit. We try to get down to Dallas Cup, and, we're still, down in Florida in the winter at times. We do a lot of prep school recruiting up north and the prep school events that occur, because I do think sometimes those young men get overlooked because they're mandated to play high school because of the private school, and there's some really good players, up in the New England prep schools. And then obviously, we use our ID camp here. We do 2 a year at Wake Forest, and as you know, we're heavily involved and totally about it. So we have, I do think camps are a good opportunity for kids that aren't maybe playing in all those major events to be able to be seen by people. We don't do a lot of outside camps, you know what I mean, and going around. So we try to hit the major events, but we will go off for some one-off, to watch an individual play, to their hometown to watch them play on a Saturday, Sunday, and you get to see the way they interact with their teammates a little bit more than these big events that you're speed dating at. And I do say is when you go to if it's camp, and I tell kids at camps all the time is, some people like to evaluate camps and ID camps if you get a call from a school afterwards, was it a good camp? That's the only way we evaluate camps. And I think that's completely false. The way I look at it is if you go to a 2-day camp, right, and you have Coach X and Coach Y there for 2 days, right? Over 2 days, you have been seen more than maybe 4 or 5 major events, because it's very rare myself or my staff of 3, 4, whoever we send to these events gets an opportunity to watch a player that long, right? That's good and bad, right? If you perform at a high level, you get to see, but the longer you're there, you actually start seeing the way they interact with people. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I don't have good players around me. Well, make them good, right? Because that's what we're looking for in players. So I do think in some of those events, you get to actually know people more than the speed dating at these major events. So with that, well, was it a good camp or not because Wake Forest didn't call me or School X didn't call me? Not necessarily. What did you learn from it? Right? How did you perform? Not from an eval perspective, but college soccer is one of the smallest sporting worlds I think around. Like, so Division III, NAIA, junior college, we all are intertwined in some capacity, right? And I get more calls afterwards. Hey, I heard this kid was at camp. Did you work him? What do you think? And I'm like, yeah, for us, maybe not, but he has this, this, and this. We've helped kids through, but you never know who's watching. Wake Forest is watching, but Wake Forest could be watching to communicate with 30 other schools to try to help one kid that, okay, maybe we don't need a winger right now, but someone else does, and they call us and we try to help. So I know that's a long-winded answer to your question, but there is so many different things in the recruiting world. Like, weight doesn't need to be at an event for you to be identified by somebody. Say one of our alumni is coaching against your team. You have no idea how that, and it's the same thing at camps.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so important for players to act as if the entire world is watching every
All
single
the
time
time.
they play.
And that's not fair. That's a lot of pressure because, oh, I want to be seen. I want to do this. I want to do that. Like, that's not the way to live your life. Like I always say, we're never going to play at a high level if we're not enjoying our football, right? And you don't need your parents saying, hey, Wake's going to be here today. You got to be on your very best. You like just be you, right? Just be you. Because it's if you're nervous playing in front of me at a club event with all your friends, imagine your first week preseason.
Right.
So there's a different world out there. Yeah.
Right. I think it's important to talk about the ID camps because they're open to everyone. Depending on, it doesn't matter what league you're playing in or where you're from, you can attend the same event as any other player. So
yeah.
What do I need to do before an ID camp for it to be successful for me?
Well, again, I think it goes back to almost the original recruiting. I do think you should, I'm even going through a recruiting process with my daughter, just different sport, but use the same mentality, is go to camps where I think there's multiple eyes, not one, right? So you're getting the most value from your parents, investment. So like if I go in, like, what schools are going to be there? That's a question, right? Where do and maybe a diverse school, like group of schools, meaning academics, cost, in-state, out-of-state, whatever it may be, big, small, because maybe you still don't know what you want, right? So you want to look at that in preparation, doing a little bit more research about the programs, right? So if you come and you looked at my roster and there was 4 goalkeepers on my roster, and you come up to me at camp and say, do you need a goalkeeper? Well, I shouldn't have to tell you that, right? I think there's research that you can do, or, how did you guys do in conference this year, right? Like that's, but these things happen.
I call those Googleable questions.
Oh my goodness, they're very easy.
Before you ask a question, ask if you can Google it.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those, right? Because there is this mentality, well, if I ask questions, it looks like I care, right? But if you care, you would know the answers. It's like going into an interview and, with a major company and say, like, how many employees you have, or, what's your best brand? Like, you go into Coca-Cola and what's your number one selling product? Like, like we should know these things in some ways. What conference do you play in? The other thing too, is I think you take a deep breath and say, I'm going to be the best version of myself. And what's the ways that I can showcase my talent? And talent to me isn't just always running at players 1v1. And I said it earlier, you said it. The camp is open to everybody, right? As an owner of a camp, a guy that works multiple camps, you never know the level that you're going to get at a camp, right? But there's also not a coach that goes into a camp not hoping to find someone for their program. It's the same reason there's not one time I don't go to an event hoping I don't find somebody new, somebody that someone didn't know about, a hidden gem, maybe a gem where you knew them already and you just want to see the way they work and then how they interact with other people, or you get the opportunity to coach them and see how they respond to coaching. So having that open mindset going in, knowing that you don't know the level, but no matter what the level is, I want to leave with a better impression, or give a better impression than before. And it could be, like I always say, if I put you on a 5v5 team with the 4 worst players at camp, you have to find a way to win. And a lot of people head down, pointing fingers. The level wasn't good. The level wasn't good. It doesn't matter. If the level's not good, you have an opportunity to put yourself on a pedestal because you are that much better than everybody else. And you leave that camp with everybody talking about you, not complaining about the level that was there. And you see parents do that. Well, I wish the level was better. Well, if the level was lower, what an opportunity for your son to be great. If the level was high, even better opportunity to say how he formulates and rises above the challenge, because the level in college is going to be really good. right? And for me, I get calls from coaches, hey, how did so-and-so do? I think he's going to be a big-time player. I'm like, he didn't stand out. And what are we looking for? We're looking for the best in positions, right? We're not going to camp and say, hey, let's take the 10th best player at camp, right? We want the best. And is the best good enough? That depends, right? On positional needs, financial, whatever it may be. But I do think there's a little naivety that goes in, and that's that comparison finger pointing. What a great opportunity for you to be in front of 5, 10, 15 schools, whatever it may be on the camp that weekend, to put yourself on a pedestal. And at least start those conversations. Maybe it's not at Wake Forest, but if a friend's calling, I'll have 3 calls with college coaches today at some point, somebody, right? And we'll say, what are you looking for? Oh, a center midfielder. Yeah, I had a center midfielder. Like, not for me. Positionally, we didn't need, but I thought he was really good. Fair. We did a camp, not to be long-winded with you, Brandon. We did a camp. This would be great. We did a camp 3 years ago, and we had 2 of the best goalkeeper coaches in the country working with 15 goalkeepers. 15 goalkeepers, 2 of the best goalkeepers in the country working with the 15. There was a goalkeeper that went around to the coaches prior to the camp, starting on the field, are you looking for a goalkeeper? And I remember him asking me. And I said, I don't think so, but you just never know with the spring, you know what I mean, on how the young guys perform. But we're always looking, right? Like if someone's better than someone. But he said, okay. Then we went on, we did the whole day. Get an email at night from a parent of a goalkeeper, one of the 15 that was training with 2 of the best goalkeeper coaches in the country, right? So-and-so, we left right after the morning session because my son asked the coaches that was there if they needed a goalkeeper, and none of them said yes. So we thought it would be a waste of time. So the reason I bring this up is those 2 goalkeepers, in my opinion, and this is not coaches, right? Not being disrespectful to what's out there in the club world. And you look at this young man's bio, it's not like, super elite, high level. He could learn something. That's what I always tell these kids when they come to camp. Get something, learn something from these coaches. They're knowledgeable. They coach at the highest level, right? Learn something, number 1. Number 2, people are always looking for goalkeepers. And who do they call if they're looking for goalkeepers? They call goalkeeper coaches that worked with a group of goalkeepers, right? That weekend could have been the best recruiting opportunity for this young man, although maybe those schools weren't interested in a goalkeeper per se. They could have been the liaison to help this kid find a home. That's the naivety sometimes we deal with, is because you're not looking for somebody, right? The camp isn't good. That's not true. And I do think we have kids at Wake Forest on campus that we've helped go other places. And especially, as my staff and I work totally about it all the time, we're getting calls.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the piece that players don't understand is that ID camps are for identification purposes, obviously, but you're going there to play. So you have an opportunity to get better on the field.
Learn something.
Yeah, you have an opportunity to learn something. And I think even more so than anything is that what you said, you're getting coached by the absolute best coaches in the country.
Yeah.
And that's open to everyone. And I don't really think people understand what kind of opportunity that is.
I do think it's a little bit naive. I think it's funny is we go to Totally About It, and there's like I pinch myself every once in a while that I'm sitting in a room, in the ACC at an ACC head coaches meeting, and the people that I'm around, and then we put together, you have a staff, and I'm sitting there, and like Chad Riley at Notre Dame, and Brian Weiss comes in and works from Georgetown, and I'm in Kokoda. It was last year in Tampa. Connor was down there, and we did. I was Connor's helper, and then the second session, Connor was going to be mine, and we're working with 2 different training groups, and I watched his first session, right? And we're talking in between, what about this, and changing little things. And then we basically remade his session, right? And did mine, and we were partner coaching and working off each other. And I'm sitting there videoing it. So now I can bring it home. So even what people don't realize is we're even like, wow, I want to see what Josh is doing at Pittsburgh. Yeah, I want to see what Brian's doing at Tours. Like we're envious. Never mind a student, you know what I mean, or a potential student athlete. So I always tell kids at the beginning of camps is like, you have a tremendous opportunity to gain knowledge, even if you're doing a training session and in between you're like, hey, coach, what is it like in the off season? Or hey, coach, what like, because we're a little naive in some of these processes. It's not I always use the same thing at any ID camp. It's an identification camp. There's not a coach here that doesn't want to get a player or find somebody. That doesn't mean we always do, but it's not a I'm getting the words wrong now. An identification camp, but we're not going to give you an evaluation. It's not. You imagine us going to a tournament and giving evals to games that we watch. I don't think that's fair to the coach. I don't think it's fair to the kid because you're not going to get honest feedback in 2 days. Now, what you will get is a coach goes and he identifies a player that he sees is pretty good. And he watches more and more, and then he starts formulating a little bit more of an evaluation for himself. Positionally, how does he react? You know what I mean? What's his mentality? Those are the things that you can give back. That means you put yourself in a pretty good, if you're getting talked about or thought about, people are writing notes about you, you had a pretty good camp. I always say a lot of times I remember kids' names for one of two reasons, right? They were a pain and they didn't listen, and then one was like a little bit elite. That doesn't mean the ones in the middle that I don't know your name weren't good, but it's the same thing if I go to a tournament, right? I'm sitting down, I'm watching 22 guys play for 20 minutes. If I leave with one name that I like, that's good. Right? Or one name like, no way, don't like that, don't respond. That's not a good one. So you're like, you were doing this with your hands for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of players kind of in starting determining which colleges they want to go to, either pigeonhole themselves and I want to play in the ACC or I want to play for this conference. Yeah. But college recruiting is subjective. A coach here might think that you're not, quote unquote, a good player, or didn't, quote unquote, have a good camp. But another coach might think, hey, I think he's got potential and his playing style fits what we're looking for in our program. So how important is it for players to stay open-minded in that thought?
100%. I always tell people, like, if you're not recruited by me after an event, doesn't mean I don't think you're a good player. There could be positional needs. It could be, hey, you're a lockdown 1v1 defender. Right, you take great pride, but I'm looking for a defender that can go, box to box or end line to end line, and maybe that's not you. That doesn't mean you're not a good player. You just fit a different system better than mine, right? And I think being open-minded is, you also got to realize it's going to get harder and harder, right? And you're going to have to work harder and harder to find homes. Roster size is smaller. You got to be open to different things. If you have a love and a passion for the game. And you also have to understand style of play. It's like, I'm a bull. I like to put my head down and go on dribbles. I'm a 1v1 guy. Well, you have to find a place that values 1v1 from midfield third in, and I think it's, I had something different. Well, I'm not looking for anything different. I'm just looking for something that fits into our style and our brand of play. And I think I don't care if I play. I just want to go to one of those schools, right? Like we want to be recruited ego-wise instead of substance-wise, and where do we best fit? I get these emails every once in a while. I was like, hey, he'll be a great roster guy, great locker room guy. He's going to help your GPA. And he doesn't cost anything, right? Now take a look at this kid, and you're like, okay, but I want all my guys to be great roster guys, great locker room guys. You know what I mean? And you don't want guys that don't care about, and he won't be a pain if he doesn't play. No. How do you continue to get someone like that better? So you have to find that home that really matches it. And if you go in closed mindset, I'd say it's like, hey, I'm only working for a Fortune 500 company, right? I may be unemployed, right? That's not saying you can't find a school, but you may be finding a school where you're not playing.
Yeah, and I think back to your point, if you're okay with not playing, that means you're not going to be competitive. That means you're not going to help the other players on the team grow, because what people don't understand, what a lot of players don't understand, is that just because you might start off as a lower on the roster spot for you, that can change.
Oh,
Because you're going to be pushing other guys. You're going to be getting better yourself. You're going to fit into the system a little bit better. You're going to adapt to the college game, and then you might jump to the top.
well, you also have to realize if you're in a place with high expectations, right, your lowest guy, for me, are some of the most important guys. And I don't want to call them low because I don't think we have a bad player, but because your best players and these guys that are really, holding a big burden, if you're playing as a right back and our left wingers running by you every day, right? And or you don't come in with this mentally focused day where I'm going to get better and I'm going to make him better. We're not going to get better, and that left winger is going to be running in a game, and our opponent's just going to be picking his pocket all the time because this other guy, like, so there's not like that. That's not the mentality. We can't have that mentality. So, we like to think that some of the best parts of our program, because we value development, is our roster needs to be complete. Good kid, great. I think I love being around my guys, right? You got to realize, I tell kids at camps all the time, I said, what's the difference between, and this is a great point for anybody when you're looking at what do you want to be noticed? How do you want to be recruited? I go, what's the difference between my children and my team? And everybody says, you love your children. I love my team too, right? I said, number one, I spend more time with my team than I do my children. Doesn't make me a bad dad. It's just the life that we're in. I said, and they're like, then they start picking different things. And I'm like, no, what the biggest difference is, I get to choose my team. I don't get to choose my kids, right? I get to choose who I have my children with, right? But I don't get to choose my kids. And I love my kids just the way they are. But if I was choosing, you know what I mean? Like, if you're 5'2", dad may have chose 6'1", you know what I mean? Like, you always want a basketball point guard or something like that. So, but I get to choose my team. So why would I choose a kid that doesn't listen at camp? Or why would I choose a kid that's not the hardest worker? Why would I choose, a player that, only wants to have fun and is never serious? Why do I choose a guy that, takes school for granted, or doesn't work hard? Because you either work hard in everything or nothing. And they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? So I get to choose 28 guys. Now we have to recruit them. Choosing sounds like a little bit arrogant, but we choose the guys that we want to recruit that we feel fit in to the system, into the style, into the intensity, and live up to the expectations. You want to surround yourself with like-minded people, right? And I think that's a big difference. And kids go, whoa, that's deep. It's not that really deep. It's like everybody wants to be identified, but what are you doing, all the time consistently to show that you're worthy of being chosen?
Yeah, definitely. And so going back to the identification piece, I've stood out to you at camp. I'm on your radar. Now, is it important for me to follow up with you after the camp just to let you know, hey, I was there. I hopefully made an impact. I'm still interested in your program. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, this could be, if you ask 10 different coaches, you may get 10 different answers. I don't know. I am an ambitious, competitive person. And this is what I tell kids after camps. If you're sitting on the Wake Forest campus or, we're in Tampa at a Totally About It, I say the same things. I said, we're all here for the same reason, right? We as coaches want to find players. Players want to find schools. With that being said, is we're all competitive, right? The level of school, look to your left, look to your right, look at these level of coaches that are here. If there's someone that we are interested in, we will probably be reaching out, right? It's very rare that if I go to an event or I go to a camp and I see a kid that I'm going a week, you know what I mean? Like, even if I'm going away, garbage. I was on a honeymoon, right? And I was communicating with kids. That doesn't stop, right? Recruiting, just because you take a day, right? Recruiting doesn't stop. So for me I don't think it's as important for a student athlete to reach out to a coach after a camp. I always say, hey, if a coach doesn't reach out to you, it doesn't mean you're not a good player. You just may not be the right fit for them. But if you're going to an ambitious group of coaches, they're going to be the ones to reach out to you, right? Or it could be, hey, a coach said, hey, keep us posted on your schedule. That's different, right? And then you do that a little bit because they're asking so, hey, I thought you did well. I don't know if you're for us, but keep me posted on how things are going, right, with those conversations. But I always say this, listening, I do think is important too, right? So you talk to a camp and you say, this is an identification camp, not an evaluation camp. So I don't think it's fair for you to reach out a week from now and say, hey, I was number 89. Can you tell me how I did? What can I do better? And you know something? 3 days, 1 day, 4 days later, whatever it may be, you'll get 10 emails, right? Asking, hey, I was at a camp. So they're there, they hear you, but they're not listening. That's not my way of saying don't email me. It's also a way of saying, are you listening? Are you coachable? Right? So, you know, I think that's an interesting dynamic as well.
I want to just point out how important it is to be in person, because that's information that you can't get unless you're there.
100%.
The way that the coach wants you to communicate with them is so important, because that's going to show them what kind of player that they're going to get in their program if they were to recruit you.
No, I think I thought it was really good. You know, this was there was a kid that I coached in Tampa at a camp a year ago, and you saw this upside and this potential, you know, and enough to where I'm like, hey, you know what I mean? Good job this weekend. And then afterwards, I reached out to him, right, and said, hey, I thought you did really well. I don't think right now I would be able to move forward with you because of this, this, and this. But these are the strengths that I see. Right? Continue working on this. I think you can have a good college career. Thank you so much. 3 months later, coach, really listen to the feedback. Here's some video of me really putting what you said into practice. And for me is he still wasn't where I needed him to be for me to recruit at our level. But you know something? Like, that's empowering. Like, someone actually listened and got the most out of that experience. Not everybody does that. Well, coach doesn't like me. You know, hey, screw you. I'll show you. You know what I mean? I'll beat you when we play in college. I'll show you. That's not what this process is about. It's about trying to help kids get better, right? Like I always say, is like I go to these camps and I'll run like my type of sessions, hold guys accountable. You know what I mean? And some of them like, why are you so hard? Like that's what they want supposedly, right? And you know, like if a kid says, "Well, that was really intense," we didn't do anything. Right? You're not competing to put food on my table yet. You have no idea what intense is, right? You're not playing Clemson on Friday and at Pittsburgh on the next Friday, like with a midweek game. You don't know what intensity is yet. So, but I do think that's extremely important, just like listening and taking the feedback. You know what I mean? Hey, after you turn the ball over, you got to get behind it. Okay, next time walking. Or the next time you see him play, walking. Right? Like that's not coachable.
That goes back to the understanding piece, right? It's like, and knowing what value you're getting at these camps. You got a top ACC coach telling you, hey, work on these things in your game. And a lot of players won't do it, which blows my mind.
Yeah, we talk, right? Like, so, you know, you do your sessions, and then we go on the small side and you're watching the kids play, and we're talking on the sideline. I'm like, man, see that kid right there? I had to ask him 10 times to do the same thing. Again, it's like, I know his name now. You know what I mean? Like, and then you have this other kid. I'm like, yeah, he was helping everybody. What a great kid. Or, hey, we're playing a 2-touch or a 3-touch restriction, right? And then 4 touches, 4 touches, 4 touches, 4 touches. It's like, you just can't help yourself, can you? You know what I mean? And it almost becomes a joke, but at the same time, like, what are we doing? You know, but I think is those little things go such a long way of just details and getting better. We all want to win. And we had a conversation about this as a staff the other day, especially in spring. And I got like an under 500 record in the spring since I'm at Wake. I'm not like proud of that. But we all want to win, but we have to enjoy getting better. Right. And like I even coached my son's team, he's 8. And we played the other day, and they wanted to win so bad. And I said, well, what you're doing is you're losing sight of, are you getting better? Because if you're getting better, that could be just as rewarding as winning. The winning may not happen right away, but you have to enjoy getting better. And I think sometimes when they're at camps is we're thinking about, am I going to be ID? Like, no, just enjoy getting better. And at the end of the weekend, did I learn something? If I learned something, can I apply it? And then eventually the reward is there as long as you're applying for long periods of time. And I think we're so short-minded on so much of the stuff, right? We want to go from A to Z, but we skip all the letters in between, and it's a process. And it's the same thing here. Like, kids want to come in and want to play right away. Doesn't mean they're bad players. If they don't, they're still good players. Do you shut down, or do you rise to that challenge, right? Do you start joking around and taking it a little less serious because you're not playing and you don't want to put yourself out there and be vulnerable and do everything that coach says? That happens at camps as well. You know what I mean? Like, he wants me to go down. He wants me to play on my left, but I'm not good with my left. Like, I just want to see if you'll listen to me saying that you'll try to do it with it.
Yeah. I don't want to just glance over the fact that you just said in the spring you haven't been over 500, but you guys have won multiple ACC championships. You know, I think you have 4 ACC championships, and that's just incredible to players to understand the development process of it. Like you said,
but you have to earn those opportunities, right? And I think it's nothing given. Just because you're getting older, it's not like you have this rite of passage where you're going to play, right? You got to realize, like, hey, a young man could be recruited right now, right? Say you go to camp, and I'm like, I love that kid. Let's bring him in. You know what I say to him? I said, the hard work starts now, because you're a heck of a lot more important to us as a member of the family than you were as a recruit or a camper, right? What are you going to do now? There's a lot of people that, well, I'm going to so-and-so. And now it's like, that's the hard work starts. And just because you're going to Wake doesn't mean you're going to win at Wake. Last year's team won an ACC championship. This current group hasn't won anything, right? So you have to work. It's going to be hard. And we have young kids coming in like, oh, we're going to win. We're going to win. No, right? Like, it's hard to win. And I think that's something, like, especially, you know, maybe you're not playing at the very highest level. What are you going to do to prepare yourself to be in school, right? And to play at an extremely high level, because you have to continue to get better, right? And I think it's hard, you know. You go through these processes. I think a lot of young men, we all want to be pros. Every kid, if you go to camp and there's 100 kids there, or you're in your program, say, hey, it's humbling, right? It's like, hey, how many of you guys want to be professional soccer players? They all put their hands up. You know, how many guys ate breakfast today, right? And maybe half of them put their hands up, right? You know, how many guys got 8 hours of sleep? You know what I mean? Like, maybe they're like, are we doing the necessary things, you know, to match what we do, right? And then it's like, okay, how many guys want to be Division I soccer players? They all put their hands up, right? How many guys want to play, you know, be Division I soccer players on Athletic Money? And they all put their hands up. And I can say, okay, well, you know, 5 of you keep your hands up, everybody put your hands down. That's probably the percentage. That would be Division I players that receive money. And they're like, oh, you're such an idiot. Why'd you say that? Because that's the truth and the reality, right? So we have to match, but you have to do so much to be one of those kids. And there's a lot of dedication, there's a lot of sacrifice that go along with that.
And what do you think can increase that percentage of players? You said 5 out of 100, so 5%.
I don't know. I'm just guessing. Don't quote me on that one. So,
what do you think will that a player can do to help give themselves a better chance?
I think we spoke about it earlier. I do think I'm not saying a kid at a camp picking up cones and stuff makes him a better player, you know. But what can you do to separate yourself a little bit? Is there leadership qualities? We call them intangibles, you know, what are the intangibles that you bring in, the energy level that you bring in, just to try to separate yourself just a little bit, right? Because nowadays, let's be fair, if you're at a camp, even if you go to like a high level academy game, like, there's not a lot of separation between the top and that next guy. But that mentality and those intangibles allow maybe that player long term to push a little bit. It's the coachability, right? It's the being proactiveness, not reactive. It's absorbing information. I think all that stuff is really, really important. You know, like you said, like, in preparation for, like, being fit. Like fitness isn't like a roller coaster. Either you're fit or you're not, right? It's like, well, it's Christmas. Okay. That's when the hard work is, right? When no one's watching. I just said it to my team. I said, we have 3 weeks left, right? And 3 weeks is the most stressful week that I have all year because I have to release you back, right, to uncontrolled environments. What are you going to do? Hopefully we created enough habits that the guys continue those habits and they don't go back to their old ones. So I think it's that self-motivation. What are they doing? Just give them, I just said just a little bit different. What are you doing just a little bit different? How do you come into the session? Are you the last one there, right? Are you sitting there moping around? You know, are you ready to go? Like eye contact, mentally prepared, listening, you know, because coach, everybody's looking for something. It goes back to my original statement. Not one of us go to a camp not hoping to find a player. If people reach out to me, like coach, a good friend of mine, so you got to look at Johnny. I'm sitting there, I write these names down. I'm like, come on, Johnny, be good. And that sounded really weird, but you know what I mean? Like from the song. But yeah, I want this kid to be good. There's not one of us that doesn't want that. So I think that's a mentality that kids got to go. I want to be that guy. Because there's not a lot, right? You go to events, it's like we have to be extremely picky where we invest our money, where we invest our roster spots, where we basically adopt a new member of the family. You would be picky too if you were doing that. So it's all the details for me.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is so simple that players might overthink it. It's like, hey, have good habits, be a really good soccer player, and then just do that little extra to make yourself stand out.
100%.
So what's the biggest question that you get from players that you think will really help them stand out in terms of the recruiting process?
The biggest question in what way?
In terms of the one that you get the most.
Well, I think the question I always get is like, what are you looking for in a player? Right? That like as generic as you can. It's like, what are you looking for, you know, in a relationship? A good one. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like you know, I think I'm not going to say I'm unique. I do think we try to recruit even player wise. We recruit positionally, right, for our style and our brand, not just talent, right? So where we feel they'll fit into the way we play. That's setting the kid up for success, not failure too, right? But personality is big for us as well. Like someone that can fit in and play for me may not be able to play for something like him, and vice versa. And I think the level of communication is important for me. But when they say, what are you looking for in a player? It's so easy for me to answer, but so complex. So, coach, what are you looking for in a player? The best in whatever position we're looking for. So if there's 5 wingers and we need a winger, I want the best winger out of the 5, because if I don't get the best winger, I'm going to play against the best winger. That doesn't mean the winger number 5 doesn't have those intangibles, you know what I mean? But I will pass over the top talented number 1 winger for guys that bring the tools and the intangibles and the growth that we see long term, and go with 3 or 4. But I would consider them the best because they check the boxes that we want, right? So if you're at a camp and it's like you look at this one kid, and this one kid scored 16 goals in 2 games, and the other kid was turning over the team, getting behind the ball, setting up his teammates, playing off the pass, right? For our brand, this one that just scored could be the best in his mind. We think this kid is the best for what we're looking for. So I always say identifying talent isn't always the hardest part, right? It's academics, socially, culturally, financially, how do they fit in? But that's the biggest question that I get.
Yeah, and I think the next question that players are going to ask is, how do I determine what qualities to have in each position to help get on your radar? And I think that's watching Wake Forest play, obviously.
Yeah, but I also don't think a player should change the way they play to play at Wake Forest, right? Because you don't want to do that. Like we have some good young attacking players, and I met with them this week. I said, hey, listen, I'm not trying to take away your freedom and your expression and the things that you do well. I'm just asking you to do that within the system, right? And just be a little bit more of an intelligent soccer player. Like, you want to do everything with the ball at your feet, but last weekend you ran in behind 3 times, and you got in behind without doing anything besides running, right? And timing and seeing the game. I said, what's easier? Oh, running. Well, of course it is, right? So I'm not asking to take that away. And I'm certainly not asking a player, well, Wake's my dream school, so now, I'm going to start passing, but I can't pass. And I'm really get better at passing, but don't change who you are, right? Because you'll never be successful. It's the same thing in coaching. Like, if I want to be coach so-and-so and coach so-and-so, and I'm not myself, I'll never be successful. And I had to learn that the hard way as a young coach as well. I was trying to be 3 different people, right? And then you have to just find out who you are. And I think that's the same thing for players.
Yeah, so just finding out who you are, what systems you fit into, and then watching a bunch of games to determine which schools that you might fit into.
100%. With a clear, unbiased mind. It's the same thing post game. If you talk to a kid like, yeah, I don't think you do. Well, stop, take a deep breath, watch the game, come back. You were right, and that doesn't make me feel good. It's just like our competitiveness takes over. Take the competitiveness out. I know you want to play, but think, if you were me, who would you put in? If you were me, who would you recruit? Because I want to win. I don't want to be a good guy, right? And I think just that's very hard, right? Because I'm a parent, right? And you want you keep pushing them. My daughter takes some abuse because of what I do. I feel she takes the abuse of over honest. You know what I mean? Because I'm around a lot of people that, oh, you did great. You did great. Oh, you should be playing more. You should be playing more. I'm the opposite with her. I'm like, I would have taken you out earlier. You know what I mean? One of those type of guys. I think I make up for all the other things that I see on a daily basis. I'm pretty harsh that way with her. But hopefully she's getting better and she likes me for it. Or respect me for it.
Absolutely. And I think ultimately what you need to do in the college recruiting process is find a program that fits your needs, find a coach that fits your needs, and I think a lot of things will fall in line.
Well, location, size, academic programs. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go to Wake Forest, and like, do you have this? No. Oh, but that doesn't. And then you change. Well, why? Because we have a cool name, right? There's other places out there that may match up. And the other thing that I would say is, if you go to camp and you don't get that call from, the schools that were there, doesn't mean you're not a good player, right? You just need to keep grinding, and you're going to find the place, right? There is a place for everybody. No one wants to hear this, but I even recommended it to my daughter at one point. I'm like, why don't you just go to the school you want to go to and be on the club team? I know no one wants to hear that now, but you get to get the school you want, the size you want, the academics you want, and you still get to play the game you love, right? Well, I'm more serious than everybody else. No, that's being disrespectful to the other kids that are on the club team that, found their way there as well. And that's not what anyone wants to hear. But in the end, as parents, we want our kids to be happy, right? And being happy doesn't always mean making the roster at Wake Forest. It doesn't mean making the roster at Grand Canyon. It means that you're happy in the environment that you're in. And I think we lose sight of that.